You're listening to the Third Coast Gridiron H-Towns podcast on the LSG Network with your host, Marc Henry.
It's getting thick now, man. Everybody's in district play around the H. Some big games this week. We'll talk a couple from last week. Of course, the big showdown of Tascasita and Summer Creek went down to the wire. We'll talk about that and more and preview what's going on this week in the H and high school football. It's your boy, Marc Henry. What it do on the Third Coast Gridiron right here on the LSG Network, the authority for high school football. We're going to talk about some big games, but first we'll take a small break, talk about a few scores from last week, talk about that big game between the Tascasita and Summer Creek, and then we'll get you ready for this week's action in the H, man. Stay right here, tuned in, tapped in with the Third Coast Gridiron. We'll be right back.
Are you ready to take your game to the next level? Whether you're an athlete, coach, or just someone striving for more success in life, the Winner's Workshop is your secret weapon. Yes, this award-winning course has transformed thousands of lives, teaching the game-changing principles of sports psychology that Fortune 500 companies, coaches, and top performers all use to win. The Winner's Workshop, subtitled How Sports Psychology Can Make You a Champion, is now available on CoachTube for a fraction of the original $499 price. The Winner's Workshop will help you master focus, mindset, and breakthroughs to make you a champion. Click on the link in the show notes or head over to LoneStarGridiron.com and click on the ad today to unlock your full potential.
Let's jump into it. Let's go into a few scores from last week's games around the H. Nimitz gets a big one over Aldine 65-0. Shadow Creek still in the win column with a big 56-15 victory over Dobie. Big things going on in Shadow Creek. You know, they kind of stumbled out of the gate a little bit at the beginning, but they're rounding into shape, man. Conroe 38-21 victory over Oak Ridge. Those guys are playing some very good ball, undefeated up there. Could be a team to watch come playoff time. Side Lakes over Waller, 44-20. Side Ranch over Cypress Park, 24-6. Big win. Listen, Side Ranch bounced back, a couple of losses early. They're playing some pretty good football over there. Deer Park, 63-7 over Clearbrook. Dickinson, rounding into shape, man, at the end of the year, man, or the mid part of the year, at least in district play, 57-35 victory over Clear Lake. Clements 70-56 over Fort Bend. Austin Fulshear, one of those teams you got to watch. We've been talking about them the last couple of weeks. Big victory over Hastings 65-27. Got to watch those guys. I like what they're doing. Grand Oaks with a big victory over New Caney 66-7. That's a big win. Sea King bounced back with a big victory over Goose Creek 48-0. Lamar in the win column over Wisdom, 45-0. Shout out to the Lamar Texans. Stratford over Northbrook, 45-0. Jordan, big win over Cinco Ranch, 52-12. Seven Lakes, 17-7 over Katy Taylor, who's got a big one this week against the Big Red Machine. They're starting to round into shape. Kane bounces back 28-7 over Magnolia. Klein Oak is one of those teams, man. 28-7 over Klein College. Listen, Klein Oak's got one of the best freshman running backs in the state. Micah Rhodes. He's a guy that you need to know. If you don't know about him, you might want to pull up. He's going to be, before it's all said and done, one of the best backs in the country. You heard it right here on the Third Coast Gridiron. Micah Rhodes, Klein Oak, big victory over Collins. That's a rivalry game, man. And I really like what Oak's doing. I think they're going to be a playoff team this year for sure. Pearland over Dawson, 42-29. That's a big victory for the Oilers, man, as they try to keep pace over there as well, man. This is a big victory for those guys. I think that Pearland, with at 5-1 is one of those teams that you can look for to make a deep playoff run coming out, man. But listen, we're going to take a small break. We're going to come back and talk about the big game of the week. Last week we talked about Tascasita, Summer Creek. We'll pause real quick right here on the TCG, and we'll be right back to talk Tascasita, Summer Creek, right here on the TCG.
Hey, coaches, you may have already missed the boat on getting your own coaches show this season on Lone Star Gridiron, but did you know we're doing basketball shows this year? That's right. If you're a basketball coach and you want your own coaches show, we have a great business model that allows you or your booster club to make money from the show and at the same time promote your program, your kids, and all the amazing things happening with your basketball team. To find out how you can get your very own basketball coaches show, reach out to Chris at 713-269-4620.
Big time battle last week over in Humble, Tascasita, and Summer Creek. Two teams ranked in the state of Texas. Of course, we know that this is bragging rights. Everything's on the table. This is Hatfields and McCoys, brother, sister, cousin. Anything you want to throw out there as far as rivalries go, this was that game. Big victory. Tascasita pulls it out 42-39 in a great game that saw a lot of action. Tascasita jumped out to a big lead, and then Summer Creek comes back and puts up 28 unanswered to get the lead. But Tascasita, like they've been doing all year, has been that team that finishes well at the end. Now, they beat 3 ranked teams this year in Katy. They go on the road to Austin Westlake and win, and they get a big victory over their rival Summer Creek, man. This is a big step for those guys because, listen, Tascasita's been one of those teams here in the last, I would say, 5 or 6 years that has been right on the cusp of they always make a deep playoff run, but they've been running to their arch nemesis, which they'll face in a few weeks in North Shore. But Summer Creek has gotten better in that particular time span. So is Sea King in that district. Those have been the playoff teams coming out of that district for the last few years. This was a big win for those guys. They're 5-0, 2-0 in district. With, the game against North Shore looming in a couple of weeks. This was big, man. Torrey Blaylock, man, he had a big game against Sea King in the district opener last week with over 212 yards and 6 touchdowns. We're talking about a guy that's a 10 400-meter runner, close to 200 pounds, committed to Oklahoma. When he gets in space, he's elusive, and then he can make that home run from anywhere on the field, man. He also helped Tascasita win state in the 4x1 on the track this year. 178 yards and 12 carries against Summer Creek to get those guys where they need to be. And we've been talking about Corday Mack for most of the year as a guy who's been playing well in that backfield as well. I listen, you can't find a better 1-2 punch in the state if you can line them up, man. These guys can ball. And these guys are doing a heck of a job. Shout out to Coach Craig Stump and Tascasita for doing big things over there, man. I think that these guys have a chance to make a run to a state championship depending on how the chips fall. Now, they still got to see North Shore in a few weeks. And I believe that game is going to be in Tascasita because it was in North Shore last year, if I'm not mistaken. Definitely, if you want to see some top high school football, that's a game you want to pull up on in a couple of weeks. But, back to the game at hand, both teams were coming in with, high stakes and, everything on the table. I still think we know that both of those teams will be playoff teams, whether they go D1 or D2, that's the other thing. But I think, North Shore is going to have something to say. They still have to play both of those teams in that particular district. This is the District of Doom. We hear about District of Dooms or what's the best district in the state. You cannot argue with 23-6A when it comes out to teams, you know what I mean? And competition. These particular teams balled out, man. It was a great game. Over 9,600 in attendance. You talk about an atmosphere for a high school game, you got it right there with Summer Creek and Atascocita. But shout out to Atascocita for getting the win. Again, we talked about the game coming up. That's October 25th against North Shore, which is going to be a monumental test for both of those teams coming out, man. I really think that, there are going to be some, special things happen on that field. We talk about Division I talent. If you're a coach and you're looking for some players, you might want to pull up to that game. There's some Division I talent for sure going to be on that field on October 25th. But I think that, Atascocita setting themselves up to make a deep playoff run. If they can get this district title, they will be doing something they hadn't done in a while, and that's beat North Shore. Because, even though they've run up against these guys in the district, they've run up against these guys to get to state, and North Shore's been, the team that's come out victorious in the last few years. They've been right on the cusp. You can't say enough about Coach Stump and his program for developing and getting kids to the next level. That's what they do. So does Summer Creek. Now, they're going to be a playoff team as well. They went to the state championship and lost to DeSoto last year, which, listen, the DeSoto team was one of the best in the country at that particular time. Nothing to sneeze at, nothing to be ashamed of. They made the run, and they'll be back in there this year. It's going to be a long road to the state championship this year. But, I think that, these two teams definitely showed something. I think that, Atascocita proved that they can play the big game when they beat Katy on the road and they beat Westlake on the road. So these two teams will definitely be playoff teams for sure. Big win to the Atascocita Eagles, 42-39 over their rival in Summer Creek. And, it's a big game. So we're going to take a pause right here on the TCG on the Third Coast Gridiron. We're going to talk about a few matchups this week around the H that you might want to keep your eye on right here on the Lone Star Gridiron Network. We'll be right back.
Are you ready to take your game to the next level? Whether you're an athlete, coach, or just someone striving for more success in life, the Winner's Workshop is your secret weapon. Yes, this award-winning course has transformed thousands of lives, teaching the game-changing principles of sports psychology that Fortune 500 companies, coaches, and top performers all use to win. The Winner's Workshop, subtitled How Sports Psychology Can Make You a Champion, is now available on CoachTube for a fraction of the original $499 price. The Winner's Workshop will help you master focus, mindset, and breakthroughs to make you a champion. Click on the link in the show notes or head over to LoneStarGridiron.com and click on the ad today to unlock your full potential.
All right, let's talk a couple of big matchups in the H this week. North Shore's got Goose Creek Memorial, which should be a game that they should win handily. Atascocita's got Humble this week, which is a game they should win handily. But let's talk about Summer Creek. They take on C.E. King, which is a very talented team. I think that, coming off this loss, we're going to see how the Bulldogs respond to this one. Blake Thomas is one of their top players, one of the best quarterbacks in the H. I think that they're going to have something to get back right. Now, I expect them to probably come on top in this game. But listen, never count out to see King Panthers. They've been building some things over there, and they got a top-notch program. And I think that these guys definitely will be a playoff team when it comes out. But that's a big game in 23-6A this week. Both teams looking to kind of jockey for position in that district to try to make a playoff run. But I think that Summer Creek knows that they got to get back on the winning scale, a winning trail for sure. Right now in that district, North Shore and Atascocita are both undefeated. You got Humble sitting at 1-1, Kingwood's at 1-1, Summer Creek's at 1-1, and then C King's at 1-1. So this matchup right here is going to determine who moves up, because you still got Humble and Kingwood right above these guys. But I think that Summer Creek's a team that knows what they got to do. They went 14-2 last year. I think that they're battle tested, and they look to kind of bounce back in this particular game. But, I think C. King's going to have something to say about it now. They got some very good players over there. Deion Sims is a running back. He's been playing phenomenal this year. He's a guy that totes the rock and really gets it done. Dominic Toolin, DN, edge guy over there that's been playing well as well. Mouton and linebacker Smith. Jerry Smith is a guy at the wide receiver position that you need to know about. So these are some players and a team that can make some noise. Definitely got to keep an eye on that one. I think that, the big game over in the Katy School District this week is Katy and Katy Taylor. Katy's, the only loss is to Atascocita. So they're trying to keep pace and make sure that they don't slip up and get a loss as well. That's a big game as well. Willis and New Caney. Listen, the Willis Wildcats are 6-0. Right now, they're sitting in the driver's seat to win that district. And New Caney's a team that's been pretty good the last couple of years, but they've kind of fallen on hard times. Definitely a game you need to look at. Katy Jordan, listen, Seven Lakes has not really been that team to play well or just a perennial power over there. But listen, Jordan's putting together some really good games here. They got a win over Cypress Creek the first week, 66-20. Travis 41-0. They beat Tompkins 24-14. Took care of Maid Creek, Morton Ranch, and Cinco Ranch. They're looking to that 18th, October 18th when they play Katy. Jordan's been on the cusp of really doing some big things the last couple of years. They were a playoff team last year, and they came close to beating Katy last year. Chad Gasper, the Florida commit in the backfield over there, is one of the best rushers in the state in the 2025 class. He's going to have something to do with that victory if they get it over Katy in a couple of weeks. So that's a game we'll talk about probably next week, but just to set the stage for that, Jordan's one of those teams that you got to pay attention to out there in that particular district. I think if they're going to beat Katy, this is going to be their best shot this year. Great team over there. And, I think that Katy's one of those teams that, the Katy Tigers, that you have to play your perfect game in order to get past them. And Jordan knows that. And they're going to take care of business this week, and they're going to be looking forward to the 18th when they play the Katy Tigers. Now let's talk about the 5A ranks here in the Galveston Ball Golden Tornadoes. Listen, they're putting together a fabulous season right now. They had a big victory over Port Arthur Memorial last week. Of course, they got the number one athlete in the country in Jonah Williams, Texas commit. But listen, Galveston Ball's making a big statement as what they're doing. I think they got a chance to make a deep playoff run. They've always had a couple of good teams here the last couple of years, with Jonah Williams on that particular team and hanging around. But their leader, and I think the guy that really makes this thing go, is that quarterback that they have in Kyden Barker. He's a guy that you need to know about. He set the tone over there. He's been a starter since he was a freshman. He's coming into his own his junior year. But Barker's one of those guys that can spin it. He's athletic. He can make plays outside the pocket if he needs to. Josiah Evans, 6'4", 280, is a guy that sets the tone up front on the offensive line. Javian Joseph at the cornerback position. London Dayon, you know what I'm saying? Wide receiver, 6'5", 6'5" receiver, man. Ball has got some talent. Barker had over 2,000 yards passing and 30 TDs last year, and he is coming into his own. And I think if you look ahead at this particular schedule, they got Barbers Hill and they got Lufkin coming up in a few weeks. Right now, they got a chance to go undefeated. That's when they get to the playoffs where they've been kind of running into a little static here the last couple of years. And I think that, Ball's a team in the 5A D1 ranks. If they can get this ball rolling, again, that Lufkin game is going to be big. It's going to be a big game coming up towards the end of the season, man. A 9-5A district matchup. Both teams are really setting the tone there. So, there may be something we may have to pull up on. It's going to be in Galveston that last week. You never know. The Third Coast might have to make a trip to that one, man. That's going to be a great game. But definitely, Ball's one of those teams you definitely got to look up forward to seeing they can make a big playoff run. Another team and another big game is Texas City taking on Richmond Randall. Of course, Richmond Randall has Landon Williams Callis. If you don't know that name, you might want to get to know. He's one of the best sophomore rushers in the country, not just in age. We're talking about a guy that can get it done. On the defensive line, they got a big time guy in Chase Sims, who's a Texas A&M commit, 6'3", 300 pounds. He can get it done. I think that these guys definitely have a chance in the 5A Division II ranks to make a run. Sweeney's a do-it-all everything guy over there. He can play on defense. He can play on offense. He can play quarterback. He turns kicks. He just gets it done. And he's been lights out for those guys this year, too. But I think that Randall's one of those teams you got to keep an eye on in the 5A Division II ranks. They got a big one against a really good Texas City team this week. So keep an eye on that game. Keep an eye on those guys. I think, shout out to my guy, Coach Randall. We'll have to get him on the show and talk about these guys in a couple of weeks before the season's out, man. And, he's definitely a friend of the show. He's had stops at Maid Creek before he got to Randall, and he's done a phenomenal job for a program that's been around 3 years. And the last two, including this year, they're going to be a playoff team this year. They're undefeated, ranked number 6 in the state as we speak. So, that being said, that's one of those teams that you want to watch. And as we start to get closer to playoff time, we'll start to talk about how some of these playoff matchups might shape up in a couple of weeks. But, there's a couple of big games around the age for you to take a look at, man. If you're not doing nothing, these are games you want to pull up at. Absolutely. Get some eyes on some of the top high school talent in the age, man. But listen, we appreciate you listening and joining us right here on the Third Coast Gridiron on the LSG Network each week, man. I am your host, Marc Henry. You can follow me on Twitter at Third Gridiron or at MarkHen44 on Twitter, on Instagram at Mark_Hen44. Man, also check out onthemarksports.com for the latest in high school action around the state of Texas, man. We are definitely in the game for you, man, right here in the H Third Coast Gridiron H-Towns podcast. We'll talk at you next week. We out.
Have you ever thought about doing your own podcast? It is the absolute best way to grow your brand, spread your message, and build your following. Fresh Media Works can help. We do all the heavy lifting, and you just focus on your message. To find out how easy we can make launching your new podcast, call 713-269-4620 or check us out at freshmediaworks.com.